everybody? This is Lewis Beck. Bop, I just ran away. Welcome to 343 TV and my show specifically, Electronic Music Essentials. Great to see a lot of you guys already on here. What up, Andrew Duke? What up, Enigmatic Onion? What up, Pat Splat? I don't know who you are, but I love your name. So, I hope we get along. Anyway, welcome to 343 TV, right? For those of you that are just joining us for the first time, really appreciate, welcome. This is the online educational content channel for the school 343 Labs, which is a music production school that is based in New York City and in Berlin, and also online. We offer classes in Ableton, Logic, synthesis, mixing, mastering, arrangement, theory, vocal production. We got a lot of stuff, right? So if you dig the content today and you think you're ready to take your production skills to the next level, shameless plug, then go ahead and visit 343labs.com. Anyhow, what's up, King Tut? What's up, Tikai? I hope I pronounced your name right. Welcome, everyone. Anyway, so let's just go ahead and get started. This week, I'm going to be kind of continuing on a little bit from what we talked about last week. And I'm going to be talking about rhythm and groove. And so the kind of the concept of this show, right, just in case you've been tuning into some of the other shows and this is your first time tuning into mine, the concept of the show is I'm picking like really broad topics that are important to electronic music production and music production in general each week, and kind of doing a deep dive on like what the basics are, what are the things to keep in mind, and how learning this skill can immediately improve your music, right? And that's the idea here, is to give you guys skills, concepts, methodology to be able to make your music just immediately better, right? So anyhow, let's just jump right into it. So I am going to start by kind of doing a really like basic discussion of this. So I just want to forewarn you that like I'm not going to be making a beat immediately, but I'm going to, trust me, we're going to be making a lot of beats today. That's pretty much like what today is about. Anyhow, I got to set my preferences so that they are going to you guys. Beautiful. All right. And so the topic of rhythm and groove, right? This is a cool. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, Takai. He's saying in the chat, drums are the element that interests me the most in production now. Better drums make a way better track. That's definitely true. I think that whenever a track has drums in it, and drums are important for it, then the better the drums are, the better the track usually is. That being said, we're not actually only going to be talking about drums today, and this is actually a great place to start with the discussion. So a lot of the times when people think about rhythm and think about groove, right, they're thinking about percussion. And the fact of the matter is that while percussion is, of course, super important, while drums are super important in terms of carrying rhythm and kind of carrying groove, they are not the only place where rhythm and groove are taking place. And in fact, getting a more nuanced understanding of why that's the case and how you can take rhythm and groove and apply it to pretty much every situation in production is going to actually improve your overall feeling of the track. So one thing that I love to do when I'm teaching this subject is to actually go ahead and pull up a track by James Brown. And this track is called Doing It to Death. Do It to Death. Let's make sure my output All right, cool. So for those of you that don't know, the JBs are James Brown's band, and the cool thing about them is that it's really more just based in like pure funk grooves than it is on like James Brown's voice. Not that there's anything wrong with James Brown's voice. James Brown is super dope. Real quick, Enigmatic Onion, I'm not going to take the time to address that, but I also just want to just be totally honest that like I just don't have enough experience with either of them. The subharmonicon seems super cool though. So, I don't think it's as practical though. That's my sense. Anyway, that being said, let's go ahead and check this song out. Which is not loading, making me look really bad. Let's try that again. All right, I may have to abort, which makes me sad. I might actually have this track in my iTunes library. Oh yeah, I do. Okay, perfect. Bye-bye, YouTube. We do not need you. All right, so let's see. Do I need to download this or something? What is going on? All right, let me try to drag this in. I'm very sorry about this, guys. I don't know why my computer's freaking out. Oh, man. That is very disappointing. I really, really, really want to show you guys and play you this song. All right. Well, forget about it. Sorry. I guess I'm going to have to start somewhere else. Anyway, so the reason I usually pull up that song is just because it's a really cool example of how an entire band gels together to create one rhythm, one groove, right? So let's get back on track here. When I'm talking about rhythm, when I'm talking about groove, right, what I'm really talking about is something that's very, very simple, right? And that's basically the points in a musical phrase where there is stress, right? Yeah, it could be that, TK. So let's just go into samples real quick. Or let's go into my packs and find a loop, because there's actually some pretty solid loops. Let's just go to a percussion loop. This is a cool place to start. All right, so when it comes to creating a rhythm or a groove to your song, right? The number one thing that I think people do that's like a problem when they're producing, if they're kind of, still trying to figure out their sound or still learning a little bit about the way music works, is that they try to overcomplicate groove, right? They try to make rhythms too complicated. So I just want to kind of briefly point out to you guys that one of the biggest secrets to making good music is keeping it simple. There's this kind of false impression that people feel like in every walk of music production that like, oh, if I'm not doing a lot, I'm not being professional. And that's not true. Being professional when it comes to music production is really more about making the right decisions. It's not about understanding how to do the most complicated thing, right? Really, really great songs can only have two elements, right? It's just about understanding how to do them right. And so to that very point, right, if you look on like the radio, and you look at that Justin Bieber song, oh man, how does it go? The one where he's like, you should go and love yourself, right? So that song has two things happening in it. There's a guitar and a vocal, right? And so the thing is that you may, maybe if you're thinking about rhythm and groove in the context of drums, you're like, oh, that song doesn't really have a rhythm or a groove. But it actually has a really, really strong one, and it's just held on the guitar, right? If you go and listen to like a lot of solo guitar music, you'll also find, or just solo piano music or solo instrumental music in general, you'll find that the single instrument is doing a lot of percussive work and rhythm and groove. Okay, so I'm going to shut up now. Let's actually start working on some stuff. Let's slow this down. I'm going to loop this, and let's put it onto complex mode. All right, so the thing about rhythm, the thing about groove, right? When people think about rhythm, they oftentimes are thinking about when something is played, right? So they'll be like, oh, let's put another 16th note here. Oh, let's put an 8th note there, something like that, right? Well, the thing is that it's not only about that. What it's also about, and I would actually argue it's more importantly about, is it's not when something is played, it's how something is played. So, yes, so Anas, the stream will be saved. You can actually, it'll be uploaded pretty much like immediately after we finish. So check back tomorrow and the whole stream will be saved. All right, so the thing is that when it comes to rhythm, when it comes to groove, right, it's not about when you play it, it's also about how you play it. And the thing is that more than anything, I'd say how you play it is even more important than when you play it. So right now, right, if we look at this groove, this rhythm, we can see that there's a really loud bongo on every single downbeat, right, on quarter notes. Right, so you can hear that it's falling cleanly like that, right? So it's in 4/4 because it's looping and it loops cleanly here, and there's a stress on every quarter note. But the thing about this that actually makes it feel good, and as Mac Joseph is pointing out, yes, there is swing here, right? And we'll get into what that means in a second, right? Swing is just basically, instead of having notes fall perfectly on where the grid is, they're going to be either shifted back, like to be happening late, or shifted early to be happening a little bit early. And what this does is it kind of causes the rhythm to like jump into itself a little bit more and gallop. Now, the thing is that this rhythm, which is really bouncy, right? Just with bongos, I could make this a really bad rhythm, right? And the way I could do that is if I actually just went through here and made every single sound the same volume. And so the thing that we're going to notice pretty quickly once I do this is that the feeling of the groove, the feel, right, which is actually like that is a technical term musically, is going to be thrown like way, way, way off. And it's not going to sound the same or feel the same. The rhythm will just be different, literally. So let's check it out. And so what I'm doing is I'm dragging on the original one as well, so we can compare them. Versus so this is kind of weird, right? It's exactly the same thing. And so in this groove, what it's really about is right? It has this nice little gentle galloping thing. But what's going on here and you can even see actually what's interesting is that it completely throws off the feeling at the end because this note is not loud enough. I didn't make it really loud. The timing is almost even thrown off, which is interesting too. And so there's like a really different kind of just, yeah, exactly. So the room tone is coming out, and the sense of just like dynamism completely goes away. That's a great point. Dynamism, right? Now, the reason that I'm pointing this out is because rhythm is really about the conversation in tonality and volume more so than it is about when things are happening. And so that's just the first example I wanted to give. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to make a beat really quick. And I'm just going to make, like, for instance, the kind of like the quintessential like reggaeton beat. And the reason I'm going to do this is because it's like kind of the greatest place to learn how this thing that I'm talking about functions. So let's take some toms now. All right, so check it out. This is like kind of the quintessential reggaeton rhythm. Right? Very, very classic. So the thing that's happening here that makes this rhythm interesting, right, is something that we call syncopation. And so syncopation is when you take a note and you shift it to what's called an offbeat. And so an offbeat is pretty much going to be like a beat that isn't one of the main stress points. That isn't a quarter note or an eighth note, usually, right? That's not always true, but usually. Especially in the kind of music that we're all dealing in. So if I just put it right here, right? It's kind of derpy, kind of boring. Especially because it's so slow, right? It's kind of like a weird house groove. But when I take the tom and I shift it over one, right? So it's a 16th note. So basically what's happening is the tom is swinging into the kick almost, right? I don't mean swing in terms of like we've shifted it. I mean swing as in like it happens so fast that it feels like it's kind of just diving in, right? So let's like analyze this rhythm and figure out why it's so damn popular, right? So one thing that happens, really one of the secrets, the biggest secrets about rhythm and groove, right? And I think I actually brought this up last week when I was talking about bass and bass lines and kicks and stuff like that. Maybe you don't remember it. Maybe you do remember it. So there was this bass player one time that told me it's everything that it ain't when he was talking about rhythm. And what he meant by that is the thing that really makes the rhythm is the spots where you don't play notes or the spots where you don't stress notes, right? The spots where you allow something to breathe. And so the thing that makes this groove so goddamn infectious, right, is that there's this really long pause in both these spots when we jump off the kick. So there's like, we're almost like pausing. There's like a lot of space just being left. And you can actually see that even without these toms, we're still going to get some kind of feel. Whereas if we take these two away, it's a thing, but it's a little more like boring, right? There's not as much spice to it. Now that very, very simply just has to do with this idea of, actually, yeah, as Mac just pointed out, the distance between notes, right? I mentioned this last time as well, that the definition of a musical note, right? And what I mean by the definition is like its purpose, its meaning in music, right? Only has to do, or rather is defined by the next note that's played. So it's the same thing in rhythm, right? This note holds no meaning until another note is played, right? So, for instance, if we just even like simulate what I just did, and do this, leave a lot of space. Like even that is actually a pretty solid little rhythm, little groove to build off of. And the main reason being is that there's just really, really simple stress points, and then there's some syncopation, a thing that we leap off on, right? So every good groove is going to have some spot in it where it throws you off a little bit, right? Where something comes too fast, or at least I don't want to say too fast, where something comes a little faster than you'd expect, or when something comes a little slower than you'd expect, right? Now, the other part of this, which I think is way cooler to actually talk about and demonstrate, is what happens when you start actually changing the positioning of certain tonal sounds, right? So, for instance, house music. Let's take house music, okay? Just for a quick second. And let's make a house music rhythm. You might be saying to yourself, that's not a house music rhythm. That's just a really, really fast set of kick drums. Well, I'm going to argue to you that it is a house music rhythm. I'm going to show you why. If I put a hi-hat on every spot where the kick is, all of a sudden, you have a house music groove, right? And that's gliding and feeling natural, whereas this psychotic shit is just giving you a headache, right? So this is like the most basic way that I can demonstrate to you that it's not when you play the note, it's how you play the note, right? So the conversation between instruments in music, right? In different moments in time, different moments in musical space, is like super important in terms of establishing the feeling of the track. So for instance, if we were to change around these toms, so let's actually do this. If we were to shift their positionality and change the relationship, we would actually get a completely different feeling in the groove, even though it's the exact same rhythm, so to speak. Let's check it out. This is the one we have. Versus so let's talk about what's actually happening right there. Now, I realize this all might seem like super simple and basic. It'd be like, well, these are things that I intuitively maybe understand. And that's a good thing, right? If you intuitively understand this stuff. But learning this on a really basic level can actually help you apply it to way more complicated circumstances, right? And we're gonna take this somewhere much, much cooler in a second. So the thing is, the way that I like to think about the way that a rhythm is functioning is you have open notes and closed notes. I always think that there are open sounds and closed sounds, right? So you can probably guess that I think that the The high tom is the open sound, and the low tom is the closed sound. And the way that I'm determining the open sound and the closed sound has nothing to do with timing. It actually just has to do with tone, like purely tonality, right? So this is an open close, right? And this is a close open. And now the thing is that when you're, what's cool about rhythm and groove and what's weird about it, right, is that people respond to it like in real time, right? And what I mean by that is if you have ever, look, we've all been dancing probably, or we've all like seen a dance floor or DJ'd for a dance floor, right? And what's amazing to see is that when you have a really, really good rhythm, people are literally moving to the stress points in the rhythm, right? So what's kind of funny about like electronic music and like house music, for instance, right? Like this groove is that if you're only working in this groove, there's really only one way to move to it, right? You have to add a lot in between to create some other kind of dance move that you could do, because there's no other indicator being given to you. Now, when it comes to this groove, right, the kick is a closed tone and the hat is an open tone. So we're kind of going close, open, close, open, close, open, right? Down, up, down, up, down, up. Whereas here, we're going up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. So for instance, right, even just combining these two kind of juxtaposed rhythms, you can get like a really, really cool groove going. Sometimes I hate the way Ableton copies things over. I really do. Whatever. So you could get a cool groove going whereby you alternate between the down up and the up down. Right? Now the thing is that this is like super simple, right? Like couldn't be more simple, but that's literally enough to build a song around. Right? That's what's kind of wacky and crazy. And so the secret really, or one of the secrets, is that you want your basic groove to be like pretty simple, like pretty straightforward. And you want to build around that, right, to make something that is cool. So I'm going to do something that's going to be a little bizarre in terms of the way that I'm going to actually like put music to this particular song or this particular beat. And I'm going to make like a kind of disco rhythm with a bass line. And I'm hoping that this may actually be kind of eye-opening for some of you who may have been trying to figure out how to do this and had it. And maybe you all understand how to do it, and I'm wasting my time, but I'm hoping that it'll help at least a couple of you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in another really, really, really simple, straightforward rhythm. So I'm just going to put in like an eighth note bass line. And it's all going to be the same note, right? Let's make it a little deeper. Let's do that. I'm feeling that. Maybe actually a little higher up. Yeah, let's do F sharp. It's kind of a cool sound. All right. So first off, if I throw in this bass line, what's funny is now I've taken two of the most like profoundly straightforward rhythmic kind of combinations that you could put together. Okay? We just have a straight eighth note groove, right? And what that's basically meaning is it's just, no nuance between any of these notes. It's all just exactly the same sound. And then we have the reggaeton rhythm, right? So let's turn these off for a sec. Let's talk about what's happening for why that actually feels good and is like already pretty groovy. So if we look carefully at the bass line and the reggaeton toms, what we're going to see is that after the first bass note is landing with the kick, right? The second bass note is landing in between these two kicks on an eighth note. So it's pretty standard, right? Which is like very basic. But what's also happening is now this tom is filling in this space between this note and this note. So we get a 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. Right? One, two, three, 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, right? And without that note, it's just 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2, right? So the strength in this rhythm initially is the fact that and the strength of this rhythm, this groove, if you want to really talk about, kind of the same thing at this point. The strength in this is coming from the fact that this is leaping off of this note and onto this note, right? And then we're landing in a settled state when this note overlaps with this note, right? So one of the best ways to make a groove that like makes sense, right, is to essentially make sure that any moment where your core groove is accentuating something, that should also be a place where other instruments are accentuating things. And so I'm going to demonstrate this to you. I'm going to build a beat now around this groove, right? Trying to really honor what the core element of the groove is. But actually, before I go ahead and do that, what I also want to do is I'm going to show you now that disco thing I was talking about, how to make this bass line groovier, right? And so this is like one of the most important things in bass design and in electronic in kind of synthesizer programming, okay? So if you come into Wavetable, and this is, by the way, true in every synth like that exists pretty much. If this doesn't exist in the synth, super questionable. So where it's located in Wavetable is here in the matrix. So I'm going to go into the matrix, and I'm going to go to envelope 2. And it's currently routed to my filter 1 frequency. I'm going to route it, or rather, it's currently aligned with it. I'm going to route it right there. I'm going to go like this. And so what you're going to see is, and I love teaching it on the synth, is that this is going to open, right? So when you apply an envelope to a filter, what it does is it causes it to open and close. Now, the intensity with which it opens and closes has to do with this, and so I'm going to turn it down a little bit. And Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my MIDI matrix, and this is where things get fun. I'm going to go to my velocity, and this is really like one of the biggest secrets, I'm telling you right now. And I'm going to turn this up. And so what this is now going to do is that my velocity is going to work in conjunction with my filter envelope. And basically, the higher velocity it is, the more the filter is going to open, and the lower velocity it is, the less the filter is going to open. And so remember what I was talking about 5-10 minutes ago. It's all about open tones and closed tones, right? So tones that are talking to each other, that are opposites in some way or another. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to highlight all the downbeats. So we get this. Now that's like a little too aggressive for my taste. Let's go ahead and shorten all these notes a little bit too. So this is a distinctly different feeling. Then let's take the same thing and let's see, this is 77 velocity, it's 45. Put these up to 77. Listen to how distinctly different the feeling is, the sense of propulsion and thrust and groove between this one and this one, right? So this one doesn't have any oh, Jeff, what's up, dude? Welcome. So this one, right, has the velocity adjustment with the filter, and this one does not. And so let's actually watch what happens in the synth. So this actually has motion. This in and of itself, right, makes you actually want to start moving. Whereas this is just really just like persistent and doesn't have much nuance to it. There's no motion in the sound itself. So when we combine this now, with our groove that we now have, the initial one that we created, we should get a pretty funky result. Oh, there we go. Okay. So let's maybe take these, raise them an octave just so we can really hear it off the kick. Even without the kick. So what's happening here, right, is that the kick drum is reinforcing a place that already exists in the groove with this bass line, right? Which is simply the down note. So it's kind of as if that part of the bass line is like we don't really hear it, but the thing is that the rhythm doesn't change at all, right? Because we already had established that feeling in the bass line. Yeah, it's funny that you say that, Nico, because that's what we're doing. I was talking about, we were just using this reggaeton groove because it's such a basic example of how groove and rhythm functions. Anyway, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to start building a little bit of a track. And I'm going to add a synth stab, right? Like a chord stab. And I'm going to strategically place it so that it actually overlaps with one of the syncopated moment in the beat. So what was I doing? I was working in F sharp, I believe. Yes. Let's do a little minor chord stab. So it should overlap here, right? Now the thing is that alone sounds like pretty shitty, right? It's literally just like a preset sound in the synth. That's just what it opens with. But also, the main reason that it's sounding really bad, right, is because we are now breaking up the feeling of, give me a sec. We're breaking up the feeling of this groove right here, right? And so you may remember last week when we were talking about bass and kick that we were talking about kind of decay times, right? And lengths of the kick and lengths of the bass line. And so it's not just about, remember, how it's played, or rather, it's not just about when it's played, it's how it's played. Now, how it's played is not only tonal, it also has to do with time, right? So this note right here, this chord stab, is bleeding over, right? Whereas this tom right here is not. It's getting eaten by the kick immediately, right? Our ear is taken from this attention, from paying attention to this note, to immediately paying attention to the kick, which is what gives it its quick sense of motion. So what I need to do is first make this chord short enough so that it actually dies on the kick. So I'm going to turn the release way down. So now we're starting to get somewhere. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this down a little bit and actually make this more of an interesting sound. And I kind of want, effectively, if we look at the power of this note, right? It's really only from here to here, excuse me. From here to here, right? About a 30-second note that we have the initial power of the transient. So if I take this chord and shorten it, oh no, that's moving it, and shorten it so that it locks in right where that where the power of the transient ends. This is going to make even more sense with the beat. Now, if I were to do this every other bar, we get this, right? That's pretty groovy. Now, I happen to like to invert these types of minor chords when I use stabs. So I'm going to lead with the F sharp. We get this. Now, what's interesting is we could even create a groove out of these chords which completely mirrors the groove that we have created around them, right? And I'll show you what I mean. I could put this right here, this note. We get this. Oh, excuse me. That is just super fucking hypnotic. Right? And the reason is because I'm now playing games with this entire rhythmic structure, right? So I have downbeat, so we have quarter note, eighth note, 16th note. And you'll see that in my chords, it's going quarter note, eighth note right here, and then 16th note right there. Right? So quarter, landing on the quarter, landing on the 8, landing on the 16. Now, to the very same fact that to the very same point that I had before about automating the bass line, or not automating the bass line rather, but setting up the filter envelope so it opens and closes, we can do the exact same thing with the chords. And it's going to make them sound way, way cooler. So all I got to do is I come to my filter, and it's a different way to set it up here, but you go envelope to velocity. I'm just going to turn that up quite a bit. And so I like the first one to be more closed. And I want this one to like barely even register. Like make like a ghost note. Those are still a little bit loud. Now the thing is that these chords now are not being picked up because they're too quiet, so I'll turn them up a little bit. Right? So in terms, yeah, Freddie Maybaka. Okay, you said hello. Thanks. What about making the drop for this rhythm? Well, I mean, it depends on what style of music you're making, right? Not every style of music necessarily has to have a drop. So it just depends on, what we want to do. I happen to have an idea in my head. Let's see, first of all, how it sounds if we do this alternating thing that we had established before. I'm quite curious. Now, what's cool is also we now have this really like groovy melange. Exactly, it sounds like the fourth bass note almost disappears. And that's actually on purpose, right? Because now what's happening is that since the notes are overlapping, it sounds like the whole groove is actually slightly different expressions, or each element is a slightly different expression of the same groove. So like if we just take the bass line and the chord stab now, check this out. Especially with the kick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? That's like a pretty infectious groove. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? And it's coming from the 2, 3, 4. Right? Is that 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. That really quick little thing. Right? The fact that there's like space, rushing, and then space. Right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's what we're hearing, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so the thing is that even though, like, we could even accentuate this. We could accentuate this drastically if we really want to. I think it's a little bit overkill. We could do this. The thing is now, if we were, for instance, to do that, right, I would make it so this is barely even audible. And I might even do this. To B's point, I might actually turn up the velocity of that third note. But what's interesting is that we actually lose the sense of the groove, right? Because bump, 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 right? It's all about the dipping and diving, whereas this makes it feel like we're not dipping and we're just staying elevated if we change the velocity of this note. Let's check it out. So what's kind of cool is it feels like the kick is sliding in to accentuate all the spots where there wouldn't be the other elements, right? Now, in terms of continuing to build a beat around this, right, we could, for instance, throw in these hi-hats if we wanted to make this kind of like a reggae house crossover. Now, if I were to do that, I'd probably shorten these notes significantly so we can keep the kind of staccato motion, right? And apparently that's not enough. Let's try that. Yeah, I like that. It's a little bit tighter, right? So the key to this entire groove here is that things are tight, right? And so we want to make sure that basically now when we're adding things, right, this is now where people mess up. So we have a great groove. Right? It's pretty straightforward. But it works. It really works. Right? So the mistake that people make is trying to overcomplicate this, right? Is they start putting stress points where they're not supposed to be. So let's listen to how just like adding one note will change the feeling of the whole beat. So that's cool to add once, but what if we added it every single time? We've completely changed the groove. I'm not saying that's bad. I think that's actually really, really cool. I might even like make the song based around building that and taking it just that one note, adding it and taking it away, right? Or maybe something like this, right? Where we alternate. So let's see what would happen if we took the same note and moved it right here. That was pretty sick. So one of the secrets, right, with rhythm is then once you have your established groove, is that it's going to, well, like then it's really actually just a matter of adding little spices here and there, right? We have our core ingredients, but what now we're going to try to do is say, let's add some salt, let's add some pepper, right? I already have everything else that I need. And that's what these little random notes now, not random, but these little additional notes to just, make things kind of, dip and weave a little bit more, to make it more interesting, right? Because at the end of the day, the thing that makes music industry interesting is like the slight little changes, right, that we're able to add. So you find something that works, you repeat it over and over, and this is pretty much true for like every genre, and you slightly adjust it, right? Maybe not classical music, that's like its own thing. Even in jazz, like what you really do is like, here's a bass line that works really, really well. We're going to improvise around it. We're just going to repeat it over and over and over. We're going to change it every once in a while, and we're going to bring it back to what it is, right? And that's basically what the blues is as well, right? And most contemporary music is structured off the blues. So now, if I were to try to... The cool thing about this particular groove, which is why I purposely chose this style, is because you kind of can't choose a wrong note once you create it, right? Because you have so many different moments that allow you to create a new meaning for the new moment that you're putting in, right? The key, though, is to honor... and to make sure is to kind of honor the feeling of the groove whenever you add things, right? Because you remember that when I first added this chord, it did not really sound good, right? It sounded weird. So you have to still, when you add something that overlaps with another note, right? You have to make sure that it's honoring and in sync with the note that's happening at the same time in terms of what its function is in the groove, right? So like the function of this tom in the groove, right, is to lift us up, syncopate it, to make the body jump. Boom, right? Which then happens over here. And so that's why it was really important that this note, right, this chord stab, where are we at? Down, up, down, up, down. Right, it goes down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, 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 down, up, down, up, down, 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 up, down, down, up, down, up, down. Right, so it's literally always this conversation. Now, there's no law that says you only have to alternate between these kind of down tones and these up tones. That, that's not technical. I'm just creating that, right? That's how I understand it. But you definitely want to always be thinking about like how they're developing how each sound is functioning in terms of, is it pushing you forward or pulling you back, sort of, right? Is it making you want to lift up or making you want to dip down? Right? And you can literally see the way that people dance, that it mirrors these types of grooves, right? The body itself is dipping down and then lifting up, going forward, pulling back, things like that, right? And so it's extremely related to the motions of the body, right? To answer, so King Tut, I'm sorry if this is overwhelming. I know it's a lot of information, but good news is that this video will be up always, so you can go and reference it if you want, if you found it helpful. And Freddie May Baca, to answer your question, I mean, I actually sort of think it would be cool to challenge yourself to make music that's really compelling with only 8 channels. Because if you're able to make something that's really compelling with a limited amount of things, then that only means you're going to make stuff that's even more compelling once you add more stuff, right? Because what's going to happen is that your core groove is going to be so strong, right? Like someone once said to me, and I didn't really get it at the time. I was like, whatever. But the more I thought about it, the more I progressed through music production and, growing as a musician, I realized it was true that, like, if your drums and your bass and your lead instrument, whatever that is, if those don't make you want to move and those alone aren't enough for a song, no extra amount of elements are going to make it. So, right? That core foundation just needs to be there and function. There has to be something inherent in the most basic element of the track that is compelling. You can add as much as you want, but if the core element, the core groove, the core motif, the core rhythm, right, isn't something that grabs you, then it doesn't work. And so, the funny thing is that like I was saying, to the point of this kind of subject matter, I think it might be interesting to try to purposely only work with those 8 tracks. And you're welcome, Aguante Bonavena. I hope that I just pronounced that correctly and didn't butcher it. I'm very sorry. I'm glad that you're finding it helpful. So let's go ahead now and add like a bass line, right? We could add something that actually would sound really cool. At least I'm hearing in my brain something that might sound quite nice. Wow, Max, you're late. Report to the principal's office immediately. All right. Yes, excellent. Excellent. All right, so let's see. So I'm going to go ahead and throw in a sustained bass line. Just because I'm hearing that could be kind of cool potentially on here. Let's see. Let's try this bass line out. Oh man, but come on. Why are you doing this to me, Ableton? All right, let's see. Maybe I might have to transpose this because let's try this. Sorry, Max. The funny thing is I realized I was like, oh wait, Max is gonna do this tomorrow. But yeah, I just find that like the reggaeton is such a good way to kind of explain like how to utilize rhythm and groove because it has that built-in syncopation, but it's like not too complicated. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, I'll sing Spanish, dude. That'll go viral. This is me butchering the Spanish language. All right, so what I would do, for instance, with a sustained bass line in this groove, right, is we always want to make sure that everything that we add is only enhancing the rhythm. Nothing should ever drag it down. So with this, what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to cut out everything below 30 because it's just literally dragging the rhythm down. And then I'm going to side chain to the kick. A little reverb on there. Yeah, so then if I was to like, add a pad on top or something. The way that I would do that is I would just take my bass line and I know that these are the root notes of all the chords that I'm about to use. And I know that I'm in F sharp minor, so all I got to do now is apply a little basic music theory and know which chords are which. So, let's see now. That is incorrect. Wow, very incorrect. want it to go up like that, yeah. Okay, so this is a great question now that B has, right? So is it a good idea to stay within the stress points of the rhythm, or should I go full wild mode without any relation to the beat when it goes to the lead instrument? Now, I kind of have like a double answer to that question. On the one hand, the answer is I think you at this point just go kind of wild, right? Then this is the point where you now can really express yourself musically in a pretty free way. But the funny thing is that you won't actually... If the rhythm is super locked in, it's kind of doubtful that you'll even play something that doesn't make sense. Like, it's almost guaranteed that it'll work. I don't even know how to explain it any other way. Let's see. Yeah, let's just real quick. So I'm just real quick going to use a guitar pedal. So I'm just going to real quick use a guitar pedal. Sure, I will put a limiter on and make it super loud for you. Just for you, King Tut. Just for you. Yeah, so I mean, now it's to your point, B, pick up an instrument that you can play, program a synth that you like, and just go wild, man. Right? The lead is the thing where you get to express it across the groove, right? So the thing is that the groove is the underpinning. The groove is the thing that allows the lead to fully express itself, right? So like I know intuitively where and when to kind of just start adding things. Yeah, just based on my internal rhythm, Anyhow, that's all the time that I have for today. I hope I was Louis Beck. I just like doing that every time it appears. But yeah, I hope that today was helpful. I know it's like a little bit of a weird, dense, difficult thing, like topic-wise, to approach, even though it's so simple. But I honestly find that if you really gain a core understanding of how to like build a really like iron tight groove, your music is sort of like undeniable, because then it's simply a matter of finding people that like that type of groove, like that type of rhythm, right? Everything else becomes pretty easy thereafter. So, for me personally, I actually almost always build my music around groove. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm making drums every time, right? It could be something as simple as like, we're like, just like little kind of fun things. Right, and so that's like me. That alone could make a song, just that right there. Something like just pick. One thing that I recommend is that like, mess around with the DAW to actually just come up with like to understand how the relationship between eighth notes and 16th notes work in like different areas of the bar, relative to like quarter notes, especially if you're working quarter note. And then the thing is that I would also kind of try to get tactile with it, use a MIDI instrument, use a MIDI controller, use a synthesizer, use a guitar, use anything. But the best way to get groove and rhythm is to actually just do it, right? Because groove and rhythm is the thing that actually makes you relate to it on a body level, not just an emotional level, right? It's sort of like, I think that groove and rhythm is what creates a greater access to the emotional content of it, right? And the melody and the harmony is what then creates the deepening of the emotion. So yeah, anyhow, I hope that you guys dug the thing today. I know it wasn't quite as like maybe fun and technical as last time, but yeah, that's all the time I have. First of all, if any of you were new, which seems like some of you were, like I really, really appreciate you guys tuning in, and we really appreciate you guys tuning in here at 343 Labs. And if you don't fully know yet, like we are a music production school. I am a teacher at that school, right? And so all of our streams are done by the really talented and experienced professors and instructors that we have here at the school, who all have amazing different kind of specialties and expertise areas. And we offer classes in Ableton, Logic, synthesis, mixing and mastering, composition and arrangement, vocal production, all sorts of things, So go check out our website, 343labs.com. And hopefully when the pandemic's over, maybe we'll see you in person in New York or Berlin. Anyway, that is all the time that I have. So I'll see you guys later. Until next time. And don't forget, actually, to tune in tomorrow to Theory Thursday with Max Wild, our fearless leader. He's actually, ironically, going to be doing a deep dive on reggaeton. So if you're like digging the groove today and you're like want to learn how you can play with it even more, tune into Max's show. And also, before I forget, really important, we actually are giving away a 3-month Splice subscription this week. So make sure that you sign up for that, and stay tuned on the streams, and you should be able to find that. Hope maybe you'll